This seductive beauty is not a human. She is Yuki-onna, a member of the yokai clan. Pure and simple, she had always lived alone, carefree, in the snow-covered mountains. But on this particular day, two close friends, Miuroi and Hayato, came to climb the mountain. However, in the next moment, Hayato pushed Miuroi off a cliff. Fortunately, the snow softened the fall and Miuroi didn't die, but his legs were broken. In such harsh weather, he could only despair and wait for death. Just then a yokai appeared before him. The yokai introduced herself as Yuki-onna. She then began to mock him, saying that it was incredibly foolish to be pushed off a cliff by his best friend Miuroi. Unwilling to back down, retorted by insulting her appearance, calling her ugly. But Yuki-onna wasn't angered. Instead, she used magic to build a snow hut. She then laid down a sleeping bag for him. The reason Yuki-onna saved him was that she feared a rescue team might come to look for survivors. Moreover, in the future, humans might develop this mountain to prevent such accidents from happening, which would seriously damage the environment. After explaining, Yuki-onna took half of Miuroi's money. She had recently developed a taste for human food and alcohol, and those things required money to buy, although she sometimes stole them when no one was looking. That would bring the wrath of Kotoko, the god of wisdom in the yokai clan. The yokai have their own rules. They cannot disturb the balance among humans. By saving Miuroi, and then taking a reward from him, she wouldn't be breaking those rules. Though Yuki-onna didn't care about her appearance, she still didn't like being called ugly. After teasing Miuroi for a while, she vanished into thin air. The night passed quickly. At dawn, Miuroi was woken by Yuki-onna. Yuki-onna picked him up and then flew into the air. As she carried him down the mountain, she warned him he must not tell anyone about her. If he did, she would hunt him down and kill him, no matter where he went. Meanwhile, in the rescue cabin at the foot of the mountain, Miuroi's friend Hayato was reporting the incident to the police. The next moment, Miuroi opened the door and walked in, immediately accusing Hayato of pushing him off the cliff to the authorities. After the police investigation, Miuroi finally learned the truth. The cause of the incident was a girl named Mayu. Mayu had a deep affection for Miuroi, while Hayato had fallen madly in love with her. Driven by jealousy, Hayato invited Miuroi to climb the snow mountain only to push him off the cliff. Upon learning the truth, Miuroi left this matter to his lawyer to handle. At this moment, he didn't know why. All he could think about was Yuki-onna. 11 years passed. In the blink of an eye, Miuroi returned to the town at the foot of the snow mountain. While wandering around, he encountered a familiar figure. Yuki-onna immediately recognized him as the person she had once saved. It turns out that yokai don't rely on their eyes to identify humans. Instead, every human carries a unique aura and color. Yokai use this to recognize humans. Seeing that Yuki-onna liked ice cream, Miuroi wanted to buy dozens of them to repay her for saving his life. But Yuki-onna insisted that Mayu treat her to a big meal instead. Miuroi claimed that he was an excellent cook, so he invited Yuki-onna to his home. On the way home, Yuki-onna learned about his experiences over the past few years. His wife had cheated on him and almost killed him, and the company he had started with a partner had gone bankrupt after being betrayed. The betrayal of both his wife and friend had made Mayu lose all trust in others. So he moved to this small town hoping to start a new life. Hearing this, Yuki-onna decided to distance herself from him, as he was now a poor man. But Miuroi reassured her that he had plenty of money left and could hardly spend it all. Hearing this, Yuki-onna immediately changed her attitude. Miuroi drove Yuki-onna to a supermarket outside the town where they went on a wild shopping spree. Once they got home, Miuroi immediately prepared a lavish feast for them. The two spent a delightful evening together, but after that, Yuki-onna started showing up regularly, often dropping by for meals. Miuroi in turn began cooking various dishes for her every day. During their time together, Miuroi learned that in the yokai world there is a wise deity named Kotoko, often referred to as the princess by the yokai. Kotoko was very particular about maintaining balance and rules between humans and yokai. Many yokai lived in the human world, and they coexisted peacefully with humans. Moreover, the yokai used their powers to help humans whenever needed. At this point, Yuki-onna, who had been freeloading food and drinks at Miuroi's house all day, felt a bit guilty. She decided to do something to repay him. However, Miuroi felt that her current self was too decadent and didn't deserve the kind Yuki-onna. Consequently, he tactfully rejected her. The next day, two police officers showed up at Miuroi's door. They informed him that his ex-wife Haruna had been murdered recently, and he was the prime suspect. The only one who could prove his innocence was Yuki-onna. However, since she was a yokai, She could not appear in front of humans. So the police proceeded with routine questioning, and Miroy explained the circumstances of his divorce. One morning, as usual, Miroy was getting ready to go to work when his wife handed him a drink laced with sleeping pills. Without thinking, he drank it, but as soon as he arrived at the office, he collapsed and lost consciousness. Later, through a private detective, Miroy discovered that his wife Haruna had been having an affair. She planned for the drug to take effect on Miroy halfway to work, making his death look like an accident. This way, she could inherit his fortune and run off with her lover. Upon discovering everything, Miroy didn't file a lawsuit against his wife. In fact, after their divorce, he even gave her half of his wealth. The police found Miroy because of a letter Haruna had left at home before her death. In the letter, Haruna expressed her suspicions about Miroy. She felt that she had nearly caused Miroy's death, but instead of blaming her, he had given her money. This made her believe that Miroy would seek revenge on her in the future. Not long ago, Haruna had also learned that Hayato, the friend who had pushed Miroy off the cliff, had been killed in a car accident a few months later. This reinforced Haruna's belief that Miroy would eventually get back at her. When the police discovered Haruna's body, they found the name Miroy written on her hand. A few days before Haruna's death, surveillance footage from the supermarket had captured Miroy with a woman who looked very similar to Haruna. The photo was taken when Miroy had recently been to the supermarket with Yuki-onna, but Miroy couldn't tell the police that the woman in the photo was Yuki-onna. Thus, the police took Miroy back to the station for questioning. It wasn't until late at night that Miroy finally returned home. Yuki-onna had been waiting for him. Miroy explained that on the day of the incident he had been dining with Yuki-onna. The only one who could prove his innocence was Yuki-onna, but the police wouldn't believe in the existence of yokai. At that moment, Yuki-onna suddenly asked him if his ex-wife looked very similar to her. Miroy didn't deny it. It turned out that when Miroy had been in danger 11 years ago, Yuki-onna had appeared before him and saved him. Since then, he had never forgotten what she looked like, even when he married Haruna. It was because she resembled Yuki-onna. No wonder Haruna had an affair. After all, no one wants to be a substitute for someone else. Yuki-onna was overjoyed upon hearing this. She decided to find a way to clear Miroy's name. Then she thought of the princess of the yokai, the wise deity Kotoko. She believed that the princess could help them. Yuki-onna then took Miroy to find Kotoko, but as soon as they arrived, Kotoko suddenly accused Miroy of being the murderer. She claimed that Miroy was pretending to be magnanimous, but deep down he was holding a grudge against his ex-wife and planning to take revenge. Kotoko also said that Miroy had designed a plan to gain Yuki-onna's trust and had been using her to carry out his revenge. Hearing this, Miroy was about to argue. Just then, Yuki-onna countered Kotoko's accusation. Although she was afraid of Kotoko, she was absolutely certain that Miroy was a good person. Looking at the two in front of her, Kotoko suddenly said that everything she had said earlier was just nonsense. In reality, Kotoko just wanted Miroy to know that it takes immense courage for Yuki-onna to defy the gods for him. She wanted Miroy to understand Yuki-onna's feelings because Yuki-onna is too innocent and she was afraid that Yuki-onna would be hurt emotionally. Kotoko then told them that she already knew who the real murderer was before Yuki-onna even came to find her. Kotoko had already been aware of the situation. She immediately commanded several small yokai to search for clues. After an investigation, Kotoko learned that the police had found a letter accusing Miroy at his ex-wife's house. This letter had convinced Kotoko that Miroy was not the killer. Upon hearing that his chances of being arrested were low, Miroy finally breathed a sigh of relief. He wanted to know who the real murderer was, but Kotoko didn't directly tell him. Instead, she shared her reasoning with him. Kotoko told him that, judging from the state of his ex-wife Haruna's death, she hadn't lost anything. Nothing was stolen from her house, and there were no signs of physical harm on Haruna's body. Therefore, Haruna seemed more likely to have been lured to a specific location and killed. If the culprit was indeed Miroy, Haruna would have used that accusatory letter to threaten him. If Miroy was going to kill her, she would have handed that letter to the police, so that letter was her safeguard. However, if Miroy did kill her, he would surely have searched Haruna's residence afterward for that letter. Consequently, he would have been caught on the nearby apartment surveillance. However, if the letter was hidden elsewhere, Miroy's unnecessary actions would have exposed him. As for the name on Haruna's body, it was clear that someone who knew Miroy had framed him. Miroy was bewildered after listening, because only he and Haruna knew about their past, and he had never told anyone about Haruna's previous attempt to murder him. He couldn't fathom who could have killed Haruna and framed him. At this point, Kotoko suggested that the murderer might have a severe psychological disorder, a twisted sense of possessiveness, or perhaps had their self-esteem wounded by Muroi in the past, and the murderer must be someone Muroi was familiar with. But Muroi had no clue. He couldn't figure out who the killer was. Kotoko continued explaining her investigation. Muroi had been repeatedly betrayed by those around him, including friends, lovers, and business partners. This led others to believe that Muroi's heart was filled with hatred, and someone would exploit this, setting a trap to frame him. This person would have to know all about Muroi's situation. They would also know that Muroi had no alibi at the time of the murder, and no one could vouch for his whereabouts. The only person who could know all of this was his assistant, Makoto. At that moment, Muroi's phone rang. It was Makoto calling. Muroi froze. Staring at the name on the screen, he was terrified. Makoto had been Muroi's most trusted assistant. She had supported his work at the company, and after leaving the company, Muroi had given her the remaining shares. He couldn't understand why Makoto would betray him. Suddenly, Muroi remembered the night Haruna was murdered. He had been dining with Yuki-onna. Afterward, he received a call from Makoto to keep Yuki-onna's existence a secret. Muroi lied and said he was home alone drinking. Makoto repeatedly asked him if he was really alone at home. Once she confirmed that Muroi had no alibi, she proceeded with the murder. Muroi couldn't understand why Makoto would do this to him. He had never wronged her. Kotoko told him that the police would soon find evidence of Makoto's involvement in the murder. Muroi was curious as to how Kotoko knew about the police investigation. It turned out that Kotoko had already sent small yokai to the police station to investigate. In fact, one yokai had witnessed the entire murder process. Through these yokai's descriptions, Kotoko quickly identified the killer. Muroi was eager to know Makoto's motive for the murder, but Kotoko told him that once the police arrested Makoto, the full truth would be revealed. Kotoko said she had completed her task. Now it was time to deal with the matter between Muroi and Yuki-onna. After all, one of them was human and the other was a yokai. They were never meant to be together in the long run. However, Kotoko sincerely wished them well. Upon hearing Kotoko's blessing, Yuki-onna was overjoyed. She excitedly hugged Muroi. Then Muroi urged them to hurry up and go home to have children. At this moment, Kuru, who had been hiding nearby, stepped out. He was Kotoko's boyfriend. However, Yuki-onna screamed in fear at the sight of him. While Muroi stood there confused, Yuki-onna was trembling with fear. Kuru's identity was special in the eyes of the yokai clan. He was a presence even more terrifying than a monster. Kotoko told them to hurry and go back soon. Yuki-onna happily led Muroi away. Kotoko told Kuru that she was happy this time because Yuki-onna had finally found a reliable and good man. Kuru, curious, asked Kotoko why she didn't directly tell them Makoto's motive for the murder. Kotoko explained that she was worried Muroi wouldn't be able to handle it. After all, Muroi had always respected and deeply loved Makoto. She was extremely angry about Muroi's wife's betrayal. When Muroi left the company, Makoto had insisted on leaving with him. But Muroi had hoped Makoto would stay behind and continue working. Makoto listened to him and stayed at the company. After that, she waited for Muroi. But months passed and Muroi never contacted her, not even a single phone call. This led to Makoto's feelings of love turning into hatred. She decided to kill Muroi's ex-wife and frame him for the crime. Makoto thought that Muroi would be devastated and she could take care of him, using the opportunity to make him fall in love with her. Because of the complicated nature of this relationship, Kotoko had not shared Makoto's motive with Muroi. Additionally, the police investigation and evidence collection would take time. During this period, Muroi would have likely recovered enough to handle the truth. Another important point was that tonight was the beautiful moment when Muroi and Yuki-onna confirmed their relationship. If Kotoko revealed the truth now, it would ruin the perfect atmosphere and possibly affect their sweet moment. In that case, Yuki-onna would hate her. Kuru thought Muroi was a real unlucky guy. When he was young, he nearly got killed by a friend over a woman. Then, after he got married, he nearly got killed by his ex-wife. And now his own assistant had almost framed him for murder. But in a twist of fate, he met Yuki-onna. However, Kotoko felt that all the women Muroi had encountered, even if put together, were not as frightening as Yuki-onna. If Muroi accidentally angered her, he could very well end up frozen and making headlines. Meanwhile, Yuki-onna continued to praise Kotoko, saying how amazing she was, but Muroi wondered what their future would be like together, considering their differing beliefs and lifespans. As Muroi gazed at Yuki-onna, he decided to stop pondering about the future. He resolved to cherish every moment spent with Yuki-onna.